Thank you. We'll begin the budget review process of the Planning Committee of Akron City Council. I want to welcome everyone, our guest and everyone else. Should we conduct a roll call?
Baylor. Connor. Freeman. Fusco.
Aye.
Holland.
Aye.
Kamer.
Aye.
Lombardo.
Aye.
McKittrick.
Aye.
Malik.
Aye.
Mosley.
Aye.
Neal. Sorry, it looks like some people are still joining.
Okay.
Amobian.
Aye.
Somerville.
Aye.
Baylor. We're doing a roll call.
Aye.
Mike Freeman is joining now.
Cool.
Neal. We do have all members present, just a few are still connecting to audio.
Thank you. Appreciate that. At this point, we'll open it up for comments from Helen Tomic, I believe, or?
Yes, Helen is going to lead the presentation.
Very good, thank you. Helen Tomic, who needs no introduction, is online with us and is one of those that probably stresses out quite a bit in reference to this capital budget from time to time, but has done a great job for the city of Akron for years, and appreciate all of her good work. Helen Tomic.
Good afternoon. Can you guys hear me okay?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we can, thank you.
Madam President, Mr. Chair, council members, thank you for the opportunity to present an overview of the proposed 2023 capital budget. Each year, OID, Long Range Planning staff prepares the annual budget investment and community development program, better known as the capital budget.
Can we turn it down?
So some folks may ask, what is the capital budget? A capital budget funds major improvements to city facilities such as community centers, pools, public parks, infrastructure, such as repaving streets, reconstructing streets, replacement of water and sewer lines.
Helen
Tomic. Budget is an annually revised document that guides the city investments in public facilities and infrastructure. The capital budget is supported through multiple funding sources, including different types of bonds, grants, and cash, as well as other smaller funding sources. The budget presented to you today is for the upcoming fiscal year beginning on January 1, 2023 through December 31st, 2023.
Helen?
This process began...
Helen?
Yes.
Can you please slow down just a little bit?
Sure.
Some of us can't keep up.
Should I start back? Should I start over?
Yeah, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Just a little,
Okay.
not quite that fast, but fast is okay.
Will do.
It was pretty good, though.
So I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to present an overview of the proposed 2023 capital budget. Each year, OID and Long Range Planning staff prepares the annual capital investment and community development program, better known as the capital budget. So for folks that are new to this process, we ask ourselves, what is the capital budget? A capital budget funds major improvements to city facilities such as community centers, pools, public parks, infrastructure such as repaving streets, reconstructing streets, and the replacement of water and sewer lines. The Capital Improvements Program budget is an annually revised document that guides the city's investments in public facilities and infrastructure. The capital budget is supported through multiple funding sources, ranging from federal funds, federal grants, state funds, bonds, and cash, as well as other smaller funding sources. The budget being presented to you today is for the upcoming fiscal year, beginning on January 1st, 2023 through December 31st of 2023. This process began in May of 2022. Long-range planning staff reached out to city departments and council seeking capital improvement requests for projects. That is, city staff and council regularly seeks projects for improvements of public facilities and infrastructure for the benefit of Akron residents. Together, these projects are then referred to as capital investment program projects. After reviewing all projects and funding opportunities and more in-depth discussions with city staff on the status of existing conditions in our city and funding availability, today we are presenting you with the 2023 Capital Investment Program. I want to thank city staff for participating in this budget process, providing the framework for the budget presented today, and for their patience during the past 6 months while long-range planning reviewed the requests and constantly asked questions about different projects. A huge thank you goes out to the mayor for his guidance and reminders that we need to be fiscally responsible with city resources. This is a responsibility that we all take very seriously as we move forward in improving city services and infrastructure. Today's presentation will focus on economic development, housing, parks and recreation, public facilities, and transportation. Next week on Monday, November 7th, we will focus on public safety, water, and sewer. So having said that, I will share my screen and start the actual presentation. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah,
Perfect.
thanks.
So the 2023 capital budget is showing a revenue projection of approximately $359 million, which is about 1.8% lower than the $366 million we showed in 2022, and we'll get into some of those differences throughout this presentation. Oops. So this screen shows a breakout or a comparison between what we are projecting or proposing of local funds. This top row is local. Top row is 2023 projections. The bottom row in green is the 2022 actual budget. And just a couple of highlights. You'll note that the local funds are about $6.5 million lower, or 5.8% lower. And also of interest would probably be the federal funds, which are about $6.4 million higher, or rather 8.6%. And we'll get into details of what that entitles in a little bit.
Okay.
So for the local revenue, this identifies all of our funding sources ranging from Akron Safety Center funds, income tax, sewer capital funds, water capital funds. And these are the projected expenses for 2023 of local funds, about $105 million. State revenue varies from the Ohio Public Works Commission, where we apply for funding every year. This is a competitive process, looking at water pollution control loan funds, water supply revolving loan account funds. So the state revenue total is about $158 million. A very large portion of that is dedicated to water supply for water and sewer funds. The next section deals with the federal funds, varying from the Environmental Protection Agency, looking at community development block grant funds, and then we also have funds in here for the American Rescue Plan dollars. You'll note that this is at $47 million. Our allocation is significantly higher. We only showed what we anticipate in spending in 2023. Regional revenue sources include commitments from the City of Cuyahoga Falls, City of Fairlawn, and our joint economic development districts for about $5.7 million. And then for the private funds, we have special assessments and a private allocation for about $10 million, looking at the revenue summaries. So any questions on revenue before I move into expenditures?
Mr. Lombardo.
Yes, thank you. Ms. Tomek, what's an example of private revenue?
So it could be from a foundation, a local foundation, but most of it would be foundations or other entities similar to that. We can provide you with a list of more detailed information if you like.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay.
Very good. Anyone else? I see Linda Mobian's hand is up.
Okay. Did you call me, Mr. Chair?
Yes, Linda Mobian.
Oh, okay, I didn't hear you, thank you. Just curious, going back to the previous slide where you talked about the ARPA dollars. Can you go back to those?
Yes, right here.
Now, the local are the dollars that came directly to us from the federal government.
Correct.
And the ones designated from the state, are the state dollars earmarked for certain things? The ARPA?
They are. They're going for lead service line replacement.
And that's all they can be used for?
Correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Further questions? Tara Mosley?
Thank you. Really quick, Helen, piggybacking off of Councilman Lombardo's question about the private entities, if you could get us that list, I'd appreciate it.
Yep, we'll
Right.
do.
Thank you.
Shamus Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Tomei. Looking at the local revenue summary, I see that the GO is, general obligation debt. I guess, can you speak broadly to which of the revenue line items here, particularly on the local side, are debt related? And I know many of the, provisions at the state level are kind of long-term, low interest, debt as well. And can you kind of talk about the thought process behind how much debt related revenue is in this proposal and how you kind of think about that in discussion with the finance department?
So we do look at, all the different funding sources that are available to us. Obviously, we can't pay for all of this in cash. So we do look at favorable interest rates, and some of the water funds are very, very low interest rates at 30 or 40-year payments. I can't specify exactly which of these items are debt related versus not debt related. So I can get back to you. I do know, like, for example, in the state fund, Ohio Public Works Commission, some of these dollars are grants, some of them are debt. So we can go back and pull those numbers and get them to you next week.
Thank you, that would be helpful.
Very good. Let's see, anyone else? Helen, go ahead and proceed.
So moving on to the expenditure side, we talk about a $360 million budget. Roughly 50% of that, or almost like perfectly 50% of that, is related to water and sewer, $180 million. And the rest of the budget is then broken out between housing, economic development, transportation, parks, and public facilities. So what we do then is we take this remaining amount and we break that out for you. And so those sections are about $179 million. This pie chart also then shows a distribution of that $179 million. Approximately 17% goes for transportation, 27% is earmarked for parks and recreation, 14% for public facilities, and about 22% for debt service. This table also kind of illustrates the differences between the 22 capital budget and the 23 capital budget. So the interest here would be the transportation line item here. It's showing about 45% of our funds being proposed for 2023 and 43% of the total funds being proposed for 2022. The biggest difference here is last year we showed the Akron Beltway, which in 23 moving forward will be funded 100% by ODOT. So we paid our share of that. In previous year, we didn't think it was relevant to show it in this capital budget because none of our funds are going towards the Akron Beltway. So that describes the big difference in the transportation section. The other item of interest would be parks and recreation. In 2022, 5% of our budget was designated for parks and recreation. In 2023, it's 12%. That is attributed to our commitment to Reservoir Pool, Perkins Pool, and work being done at some of our community centers in the next couple of years, specifically for 2023. Any questions on the expenditure side?
Not seeing any.
Mr. Chair, I can see Councilwoman Mosley has her hand raised.
Thank you.
Helen, really quick, on the housing and community services on the expenditure side, I just assume this year would be a little different, seeing that we have, you know, funds, different kind of funding coming in.
So a couple of things, and I was going to touch on this when we get into the housing and community services section. A couple of comments. One, this budget actually looks at capital investment and community development, and that community development section primarily relies on the HUD funds for CDB, community development block grant funds, for home funds, and ESG. As we go through this process, please remember that HUD is a little delayed in releasing our 2023 allocation to us.
Okay.
They are reliant on Congress passing the 2023 budget. That could happen tomorrow. That can happen in March of 2023. So we really won't know what our housing allocations are going to be until Congress passes the budget. HUD then has 60 days to get our allocation to us. So we will be bringing the 2023 consolidated plan to you March, April, May of next year, June of next year. It just depends. Having said that, these numbers for housing and community services reflect our CDBG allocation. They also reflect about $4 million, no, closer to $6 million of ARPA dollars that we've allocated for 2023. The entire, for example, the housing rehabilitation dollars for ARPA is $20 million. We're not going to spend $20 million in 2023, so we carved out bits and pieces of that, and that's reflected in that budget, in this budget.
Okay, thank you, Helen.
Russ Neal.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Helen. You mentioned the Park and Recreation, and you mentioned a couple of the projects that we have, and I know ARPA dollars are funding a lot of that. And
Yes.
This question's been asked before, so excuse me for being possibly redundant. If we could get an idea of, just like you shared with housing, what part of this is coming from ARPA dollars? What part of this is coming from income tax revenue? What part of this is coming from HUD or grant or what other things? For this purpose, so we can see what our impact is as far as how many of our parks we're able to do, how many of the housing, because we know the ARPA dollars are going to fall off. If we could, it'll help us get some kind of forecast on what we need to do, position ourselves as a city to complete these projects. That's one. Because like, I don't know if Balk Street is in our forecast at all, and I know Balk Street is going to be the heaviest lift in Park and Recreation. And Balk Street is literally hanging on by a thread. The other thing is, especially since this has become part of our mission to be more equitable in our investment, and because ARPA requires it, if we can have a metric that allows us to see how our investment overlays with our equitable plan, and if we don't have a way of doing that, if we could do it the best way we can by just laying over and seeing where these investments fall within the city, and if that area where we're investing falls within that census tract, because we have to have this understanding. I'm sure many of you have seen, depending on this November election and who takes control of the House, they already told us, the U.S. Treasury already told us to be very careful and track and document your process. But if the House shifts, a certain party is going to be very intentional about the scrutiny of communities that receive these ARPA dollars. So it's not only gonna be for, our best interest now, but our best interest down the road, and making sure that we are compliant and that we're really, investing these dollars in an equitable way. Sorry for the long-winded, explanation, but I know we asked for this last year.
So, Mr. Neal, just to make sure that because your question mentioned ARPA and income tax and CDBG, if you can put that in a narrative format and email it to me, that way we can make sure that we answer your question specifically as you had. We get the answers that you're looking for. If you can do that, that would be great.
I'll do that, but I'm gonna ask this because, I mean, this is our MO every budget period. And I don't know how many, since we've been talking about equity, we've asked for a metric that we can look at. I will do that. I respect you, I will do that. But before we invest these dollars, I'd love for us to have a map that we can look at to see if we're actually having equitable investment.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going off of that point, I think that, we appreciate that many of the decisions around ARPA, particularly I think which community centers to rehab and the decision to reconstruct the pools were made with equity in mind. I guess, to Councilman Neal's point, it would be helpful to hear about some indicators or metrics that the administration sees as helpful in measuring equity as opposed to this budget. And this might be directly on point or not, but I was reminded in Mr. Neal's questioning about the 5-year OID strategic plan from a few years ago, and I just pulled it up and I see that there are a number of indicators there that might be relevant. So I don't know if you have if you want to weigh in, Mr. Bowman, but it certainly would be helpful, not necessarily right now, but it would be helpful to get a sense of what metrics we should be looking at in terms of equity in this capital budget.
Mr. Vollerman?
Okay.
Thank you.
Happy to have that conversation.
Thank you. And if there's any correspondence, please make sure that all council gets it. Thank you. Okay, anything further? Okay, very good. Helen Tomic?
So we're going to move into the economic and job development section of the presentation. I'm going to defer to Mr. Becker. Right?
Okay, members of council, Brad Becker from OID, Manager of Business Retention and Expansion. Want to go over a few of our projects for next year here. I'll get right into it here with the Akron History Center. We have $225,000 of general obligation. And basically, we are going to create a museum which will be celebrated for our 200-year anniversary. It's going to be located in the Bowery section, the new stores there. One of the storefronts will house this museum. And we're hoping to get under construction by the end of next year. Obviously, 2025 is our anniversary year, so we're going to have it up and running by then. And Mr. Dave Lieberth has been spearheading the effort for that.
Thank you.
The next project is Bounce Innovation Hub Expansion. We did receive a grant from EDA in order to renovate the second floor of Bounce. And what that's going to do is give us some more maker space, and it's going to expand our HVAC and electrical, and it's going to obviously help us to continue to expand with new businesses and startups in the building itself and give them some prime real estate to move into.
Very good.
The third project is the Bridgestone 1200 building demolition, which is the former Firestone Technical Center on Main Street. We did apply for funding from ODOD for $3.7 million. And this funding would be used towards the asbestos removal and demolition of the building. Bridgestone currently is in the building. They've had some supply chain issues trying to get their new race tire center up and running. So by the end of first quarter of 23, they will be out of the building, and we will be able to hopefully start to realize the savings because we'll be able to save on utilities and water and things that the building uses now. We plan on getting into that right away with the asbestos removal and then the demolition of the building. One note though, because we are going to try to save the clock tower for the area there, so that the new building, whatever is built there, which will be some type of manufacturing, would include the clock tower as an amenity.
Good, that's great news, good news.
The next item here is the business grants, in which economic development we use to help fund businesses that want to grow and develop. Maybe they need new space and they need to expand their workforce. So and this was brought before council, I believe, last year. And we try to make it an ongoing effort where we allocate $500,000 towards the businesses, and we try to make sure that, you know, we use equity in using it in certain businesses, whether they're large or small, but we try to get so these businesses can grow within the city of Akron and we don't lose them to another community.
Okay.
Next one is 655 South Broadway demolition, which is the building as you go into the transit center for the busing. We want to demolish that building, and we did, or we're hopeful we're going to get ODOD funding towards that, and that building would be demolished. It's in very poor condition right now, and we'd be able to reutilize that space for hopefully some additional new businesses and new projects coming in.
Very good. Okay, go ahead, Brett.
The next line item is Killian Road Industrial Park. Actually, we've brought this into council, and what we want to do here is we're going to buy 60 acres from IBH, the Interval Brotherhood, and that will be out of some JED funds. It'll be $1.7 million approximately. And what we'll be able to do is create another industrial park out in Coventry Township. As you saw in the mayor's press release, you know, the township is ecstatic because we're going to bring new jobs into that township, as well as the city's going to be able to gain income tax off of those new jobs that are going to go into that industrial park.
Okay, thank you.
We have Rubber Bowl development next. Basically, we are going to demolish what's left of the Rubber Bowl and the Heisman House out at the airport. Again, we applied for ODOD money, and we should be hearing any day now to be able to start to spend that money and get the project completed. This will be, we already tore down a portion of the Rubber Bowl a few years ago due to structural deficiencies, and we wanted to make sure that the Derby and its participants were safe. So we went ahead and did that, and actually state ODOD gave us money to help in demoing that portion of the Rubber Bowl. University of Akron redevelopment. I'm sure you've seen that the Knight Foundation gave them $20 million towards the renovation of the Polsky's building. So we want to help that along, especially on the Main Street side, and the university is very eager to open up the Main Street portion of the Polsky's building. So we want to add a little bit of funding to help them do that, and so that the building will be able to be utilized on the Main Street side.
So going along with this slide, we also have, through our CDBG program, our ongoing commitment for the Great Streets program, ongoing facade assistance to business owners located in our 13 Great Streets areas. Along with that, we recognize that perhaps there needs to be some assistance going towards infrastructure improvements. So we've committed about $300,000 of CDBG dollars for infrastructure improvements along the Great Streets areas as well. Going on to the next slide, Rubber City Match Cash Grant Program. So this is an effort on the city part to match potential business owners or entrepreneurs that are looking for a place to house their business and matching them within the Great Streets area. We do provide some assistance with architectural design, looking at their contracts, and then this is a cash match award to help them build out that space. Bounce tuck pointing is also a JED project looking at sealing and repairing brick repair on the outside of the Bounce building. The Business Incentive Program, or the Capital Access Program, this is $1.8 million of CDBG COVID dollars. These were awarded to us in 21, I believe, and this is a partnership with the Western Reserve to provide financial incentives, loans to businesses or startup businesses that are otherwise unbankable or they're high risk. We have about $1.8 million remaining in that. Unlike other CARES funds, these funds have an expiration date of September 30th, 2023. We also have money set aside for the CDBG CDC Corporation Support Grant. It's up to $300,000 for local CDCs to do any type of improvement projects within the footprint of their CDC. Finally, the Minority Contractors Capital Access Program. This too is CDBG COVID dollars. This is a partnership with the Urban League to provide assistance, technical assistance to emerging businesses within the city of Akron. And with that, we open it up to questions.
Linda Mobian.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Going back to the Bounce Innovation Expansion, the grant that you received, the money that we're putting forth, is that a match in order to get that grant?
No, it's actually, we're only, I think it's 25% is our share.
25%, okay.
Yep.
When you talk about the business grants, do we have a list of the grants that we did this year? And how much we paid those? Could we have that, please?
We could get that for you. Yep.
Okay. And I think that's all I have for now. Thank you very much.
Phil Lombardo.
A question in regards to the Great Streets Facade Grant and the Great Streets Public Improvements. So, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, this might be the third or fourth or fifth year we've targeted the Great Streets. Is there any grants outside, if you're a business outside of these Great Streets, is there any grants for the other businesses, or does that fall into the Business Incentive Program Capital Access Grant money?
And
That would fall under the Business Incentive Program Capital Access Grant,
All right,
yes.
so I answered my own question. Okay, thank you.
Very good. Shamus Malik and then Tara Mosley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Becker and Ms. Tomek for this piece. For the History Center, we envision that this $225,000 is for year 2022, and that there may be future city contributions with regard to the actual construction of the History Center. Am I envisioning that right?
We did, I believe, I think we have legislation on this already for the entirety of it, but we had committed 450,000 towards it. 225 was in this past year's capital budget, and this would be the final piece of that.
Okay, so we think that will be the total of our contribution?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. And then, with regard to the rubber ball redevelopment, do we, again, believe that, I know there have been amounts in previous capital budgets. Do we believe the 750,000 will be sufficient to finish the demolition of both the rubber ball and the Heisman House?
We do, yes.
Okay, and we anticipate that both of those things will occur by the end of the year? Or by the end of 2023?
Yes, by the end of '23, correct.
Okay. And then that was it, thank you.
Tara Mosley?
Thank you. Really piggybacking off what some of my colleagues brought up, Brad, if you could, so the rubber bowl redevelopment funds, is that for the redevelopment or for the demolition or both? Because I know over the years, we've already passed a lot of legislation about the demo part of it, so it's a big chunk of this funding for redevelopment?
Mr. Vaughn?
Yeah, redevelopment and demolition, I guess, in this specific item is the same thing. We're gonna get it to the point where, you know, we can redevelop it into something. It will be I'll call it a green site ready to go. So if we decide to do some type of I'll say manufacturing facility in there, or maybe we make it a park, those things are all in discussion right now, but we want to get the building at least demoed and get it to a point where we can start entertaining some things to do with it in the future.
So it's for demolition, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, demolition.
Okay. So on the University of Akron redevelopment, Knight Foundation is giving them $20 million. Is it just because we want to feel like we want to help out here? Because it just seems like $20 million, they'll be able to do a lot of redevelopment over there where we could use $250,000 in other areas.
And they will. I mean, $20 million is obviously a lot of money. We don't know the full extent of what this project's going to be yet. I think there could be some public improvement type work involved in doing that. So maybe some work, you know, with the streets and other public improvements. So I think we're more anticipating, you know, there's nothing specific right now that.
So this is just a placeholder?
Pretty much, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And, you know,
Did you get one more?
we would need to come back with anything that.
Yes, of course.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
And then on the bounce part, so we have two areas where we're giving bounce funding on the front where it says for Bounce Innovation Hub expansion. Most of that is a grant, correct?
Correct.
So on the other side where we have bounce tuck pointing, why couldn't we combine those and use grant money for that part? Or is there a reason why they're separate?
The grant application was simply for the expansion. I mean, this is more, we own the building.
Right, right.
So, I mean, this is more, you know, just maintenance of the building.
Okay,
Good?
okay.
Thank you. Nancy Holland, before that though, just one quick reminder for everyone. I triggered just a reminder to everyone. We will be seeing everything within this capital budget yet again. We'll see it a second time through legislation. So after it's, you know, discussed and voted on throughout the year, we'll see these as these projects roll out. With that, Nancy Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Councilwoman Mosley, who asked a couple of the questions that I had. I am interested in understanding how the numbers for the business grants and the great streets were arrived at, did these envision specific, already identified recipients and locations? How did we reach these numbers?
I can speak for the business grant specifically. That's the number that we've had in there since council authorized the program. And I think it was Brad said last year, but I think it was 2020. So that's the amount. So no, there's nothing specific that it's allocated to at this point in time. And I believe the Great Streets is the same. It's the amount that we've generally spent on the Great Streets programs. But Nella knows those budgets better than I do, so I don't.
That's correct. At this time, we do not have any businesses in mind. It's just as the applications come in, businesses are in different phases of readiness to proceed. We don't want to penalize anybody for not being able to proceed right now, so it's an open application process, and we just have funds allocated. When businesses are ready, they can apply for assistance.
Okay, thank you for that. And a follow-up on the business incentive program, which just was described as loans for high-risk businesses, which will expire at the end of September of 23. Am I correct in my understanding that if not used, those funds would return to the federal government?
That is correct, and we are going to use every single penny.
Glad to hear it.
I am on, we check in, we check in frequently just to make sure, because everything is going to get spent.
And with both that program and the business grants program, for those who are watching at home who will undoubtedly ask follow-up questions, can we just have an idea of how they can follow up to get further information for their businesses?
Sean, do you want to touch on the business, the first one, the business assistance one?
Yeah, I mean, I would think that contacting integrated development primarily, and Brad, don't get mad at me, but the business retention and expansion group is the one that basically oversees this funding, because again, it's more for it. We try to do it for projects that if you want to expand, you want to do a project, you want to maybe buy a piece of machinery that you can't get on your own. But it would be our business retention expansion, and our manager, Mr. Beckert, is here on the meeting right now.
Thank you.
And for the capital access, it could either be the Western Reserve Community Fund, the Akron Urban League, or the City of Akron OID office.
Very good. Thank you.
Thanks, Helen. Linda Mobian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question has to do with the MCAP program with the Urban League. Do we have any information as to how it's going and what kind of outcomes they're getting and who's taking advantage of it? Because, we have certain people come to us week after week asking for minority investment, and if we can, I'd like to refer the person to this particular program if it's appropriate.
Mr. Ball?
Absolutely, I can, that would be contacting the Urban League directly, and I think they might be on their third or fourth cohort of offering assistance. Ms. Gail Williams is the person to contact at the Urban League. And we can look, I can share information of what they've shared with us as well. Gail Wilson?
Gail Wilson.
I'm sorry.
We recently met with her, and she's very excited about the results that they're getting, so it'd be good for you to probably get an update on that too.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Very good. Yeah, if we can get an update on that, the performance of that program, that'd be great. Thank you. Helen?
So moving on to community housing and community services, so just a reminder, this is what the point that I had made earlier. Most of these are federal funds, ESG, Emergency Solutions Grant Program for the Homeless, Home Investment Partnership, and Community Development Block Grant Funds. These numbers are reflected what was actually passed by council in 2022 for the 22 fiscal year. and we will plug in new numbers when we receive our allocation. There are some ARPA dollars included in here as well. So the first category is acquisition, relocation, and clearance. This is a combination of CD dollars and JED dollars, looking for the removal of blight and land assembly for nonprofits. If there's an opportunity purchase where we might have to relocate somebody, we have funds set aside for that relocation aspect and then tearing that building down. But these are looking at opportunity purchases and potential projects. If you ask me if we have anything in mind today, we don't. It's just a placeholder in case something should present itself in the next year. Chodo CDC Housing, this is a matching program for the development of housing opportunities for nonprofit organizations. So think I Promise Housing, think Middlebury Manor. Those are the type of projects that we've worked with EADC in the past year to provide housing opportunities, new housing construction, and this is a match for their bigger funding sources that they've received. Demolition program, we're looking at approximately $100,000 for this year, looking at the blighted structures in your neighborhood that the homeowner provides us with their permission to tear that down, so we're looking at removing blight in specific neighborhoods. Habitat for Humanity is an annual relationship between the City of Akron and Habitat for Humanity to build houses within the City of Akron. $400,000, we're looking at a potential of 8 houses to be constructed throughout the City of Akron at this point. They're finishing up houses on Jefferson and one other location, I don't remember off the top of my head, and then we'll be looking for other opportunity partnerships with them in the coming year. Acquisition and Rehabilitation Program. This is $3.5 million of ARPA funds, where we are looking to work with local nonprofits to provide them with an opportunity to acquire and rehabilitate new housing within the City of Akron. We actually have an RFP out right now. It's due today. So I'm not sure what that's going to look like, but it is potentially $3.5 million for additional housing opportunities to potentially rehabilitate more housing within the City of Akron. Public facilities and improvements, about $300,000 in CD funds to design and construct public spaces. So we looked at the Joy Park splash pad in previous years. We also did a splash pad in Firestone Park recently. So this is the line item that we were able to fund that through. Neighborhood revitalization and stabilization.
Helen?
So this is,
Helen, thank you. I have a question. On the demo side, I recall, it was not long ago, but a while ago, we were up to $400,000, $500,000 a year on the demo side. What has that been in terms of expenditures and spending, and historically over the last 5 years? Not asking for that information today, but if you could get that to all of us, I'd appreciate it.
Will do.
Thank you.
Will do.
Go ahead, thank you.
So neighborhood revitalization and sustainability, we're looking at $4 million. So this is $1 million in CDBG dollars, and we have historically partnered these funds with the lead program. So for lead remediation, healthy homes remediation, if more work is needed in that home, we utilize the lead CDBG as a match for that. And then for this year, we're also budgeting about $3 million of ARPA funds. So at the beginning of this presentation, we talked about the housing rehab program related to ARPA being at $20 million. A share of that is identified in this line item. That'll probably be going up as the years go on. We want to make sure we spend down those funds by 2026. Fair housing is ongoing commitment to fair housing contact service. With CDBG requirements, we are required to have some type of relationship with a fair housing provider in this community. So this is just an ongoing commitment with that entity. Homeless shelters. So this is a combination of emergency solutions grant dollars, and also we talked about CDBG COVID dollars. We also received ESG COVID dollars to help our emergency shelters through COVID, dealing with housing people along, having to deal with housing, plus making sure their rooms, the eating area, the offices are cleaned after every house or after every family stays there. It was a burden on our homeless shelters, so we utilized some of our CARES Act dollars to assist with that, in addition with rental assistance. Minor Home Repair Program is a relationship between the City of Akron and Rebuilding Together to repair houses with senior homeowners that are over 60 years old and or have a disability. We do improvements of under $5,000 if it's a new roof, if it's windows, gutters, downspouts. We do ask Rebuilding Together to reserve $50,000, $75,000 for the end of the year. As folks are turning on their furnaces and there's furnace issues, then we have these resources available to us to help with those costs.
Thank you, Helen.
Community Gardens is an annual partnership with Let's Grow Akron to manage 7 or 8 City of Akron community gardens throughout the city. We used to manage this in-house, but we found that a partnership with Let's Grow Akron works much better. So we've been partnering with Let's Grow Akron maybe 7 or 8 years as well. Community Services is an annual program with various nonprofits in the City of Akron who provide social services, community services related to infant mortality, public safety and judicial system, financial empowerment centers, and information referrals.
Thank you. We have a question, Tara Mosley.
Thank you. Helen, on the neighborhood revitalization and other housing, when I look at the numbers for the lead rehabilitation abatement, and then we have the ARPA housing grant program, and then now we have the minor home repair. Are we cross-referencing? Because, with the ARPA housing grant program, I think we had over 2,000 applications. So are we cross-referencing those individuals who may fall in that 60 and over category? Are we cross-referencing those who may just need lead paint abatements? Because I know within that department, they were behind. Like there was a couple years they were behind in that department. So it almost seems like if we're cross-referencing from those individuals who put in the applications for the ARPA housing grant program, maybe we can move them into one of these other programs. So now we're spreading the love, because my understanding, we're only going to do like 200 houses, but we got so many applications. How do we make sure that we try to spread that out? Oh, there goes Thomas.
Mr. Tatum.
Deferring to Mr. Tatum.
Mr. Tatum.
Good afternoon. Of the 1,600 applications that have been vetted already, there have been some that have been identified to have a lead application in, or they've gone through the lead program, and or they have at some point in time received funding from the minor home repair program. Understanding that the ARPA program, primarily right now we're dealing with emergency need. A lot of the issues that were done under minor home repair, say several years ago, are not the current issues they got in that home right now. So we are vetting the applications. As a matter of fact, we're finding out that there's some applications that applied for ARPA, that ARPA will not put a dent in their need, because they also have lead issues, they have other issues that ARPA will be just a tip of the iceberg. So we have referred some cases back to the lead program since they already have an application in, and they're going to get much more assistance through the lead program. So the vetting is going on right now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tatum. Very good. Helen? Oh, I'm sorry. I see a number of hands up now. Thank you. Mr. Kamer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I think Councilman Fusco briefly touched on this, but under the demolition part, I kind of want to pay attention to the commercial demolition. I would like to see if we as a city are able to raise that funding up so we can continue to address these vacant small buildings that are throughout. I'm sure every ward has these, I know Mr. Lash has been great with some of the buildings I've sent him, but hopefully we can look at that line item. Thanks.
Understood.
Thank you. Mr. Malik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Tomek, the acquisition and rehabilitation program, could you share that RFP with us along with any responses that we received by the end of the day today?
We can share that, yes. I don't know if we can share it by the end of the day today.
I was going to
but we
say
can
that's
share.
tough.
Well, I think
We
I
can
know,
share,
I
we can
can-
share the RFP.
Yeah.
The actual responses, I don't know if they're gonna be due at 4:30 or like 11, so can I get a couple extra days to get those to you?
Yeah, I didn't mean them.
All right,
them to-
I understood, that's what I understood, I apologize.
Yeah, just since today's the deadline,
Good, okay.
it would be great to see any that come in.
Okay.
And then on the housing rehab, I know there's $3 million that's budgeted. How much do we actually plan to spend in 2022?
In 2022?
In this current year, yes.
Thomas,
Wait.
do you have a rough number on that?
At this point in time, I could probably give you an estimate. We just received their second report, so I would probably have to look at those numbers and do a projection, so.
Yeah, you can get back with us on that. Thank you.
Okay, and then, finally on homeless shelters, I guess I just wanna make a comment. I know that, you know, there's a lot of discussion that I hear from residents about homelessness, and I know that, you know, to your point, Ms. Tomek, these are, federal dollars that are, pretty tied up year over year in, the support that, you know, a lot of these homeless shelters rely on from us, and I think that's important. But I guess I do want to point out, you know, there is also ARPA, and I wonder have there been discussions about whether ARPA might allow us to pilot or try some additional new programs to reduce homelessness, like you know, tiny homes or car parking or things like that? Has that been a discussion within the administration?
Mr.
In
Bowman?
terms of car parking, I know the continuum of care has been looking at tiny homes. Car parking sounds great, but from best practices we've heard in other communities, there's a lot of headaches related to that. So we're looking at other alternatives, you know, more rapid rehousing dollars to get folks, because at the end of the day, you know, we want to get these folks rapidly rehoused into housing, in permanent housing ASAP with rental assistance. So I know the Continuum of Care has applied for additional dollars to help with rental assistance and get them off the streets and into housing as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. I guess again, my comment would just be that potentially this is an area where ARPA really could help us pilot some new things. And it may be that there are things that aren't best practice that we shouldn't do, but you know, there may be things that we can test out and see if they work.
Understood, thank you.
Thank you. Tara Mosley, then Linda Mobian.
Okay. Helen, can you get us a list on the homeless shelters, which homeless shelters that we're giving funding to? And if there's a breakdown, is this for overhead and payroll? Is it actually for the homeless shelters to help those individuals? If you could get us that breakdown, I'd appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank
For
you.
2022?
2022 and 2023 projection for
Okay,
2023.
gotcha.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Linda Mobian?
Thank you. Where can we find, do we have anywhere in this budget regarding housing where we are trying to address the eviction problem? Are there funds set aside? When I looked at the community services, I was thinking maybe there could be dollars there, but I don't know. Are there dollars somewhere within this budget for that problem? Because it continues to be a problem that we.
So I alluded to the continuum of care a minute ago. There are a number of agencies that receive dollars related to homeless prevention as well. So, but for these funds, these folks would be evicted. Those dollars do not pass through the city of Akron at all, so they're not reflected in this budget. But I can get you a continuum of care budget and separate rapid rehousing dollars and homeless prevention dollars.
Okay.
Is there,
Well, I guess I continue to hear from these folks week after week that are being evicted. And Lord knows I don't know exactly the circumstances, but I'm just wondering if there are dollars anywhere that we can move to address that more clearly in this budget.
is there, thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Mobian. Is there, within the operating, do we see funds within that?
We have had Helen and I have had conversations about right to counsel. I did suggest it, and she made me very aware it would be more appropriate in operating. We've had conversations with not only legal aid, but the Public Defender's Office is actually pricing it out. We already have a contract with the Legal Defender's Office at the Akron Municipal Court, and the Public Defenders is not only in Akron, but they're in Summit and Stowe courts as well. So Andrea Whitaker's taking a look at that. She's going to provide us a number, but the administration has made a commitment to absolutely fund right of counsel.
Thank you. And it seems like the operating would be the appropriate place versus capital. But thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Mobian. I see Mr. Malik and then Nancy Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one follow-up. One of the things that we've heard a lot about over the last year are the conditions in a lot of the multifamily developments like Wilbeth Arlington and Erickson and Mayflower and Timbertop and on. I know that these are private developments and that we want to be careful, not to, that we have to hold these entities, the owners, accountable. But has there been discussion about using any funds to help improve the conditions in some of these large multifamily complexes that are in, really deplorable states?
Mr. Volleman?
I mean, have there been discussions? Yes. I mean, we've had those discussions, but again, is the issues that you pointed out is that, I mean, the majority of these are private for-profit landlords that, we have been, with the acquisition and rehab, that program that's in this as well, we are, the idea behind that is trying to create more affordable rental properties, for people to be able to move into, but, at this point, I don't see a program where, we would fund a private multifamily, property owner.
Okay, and I understand that, but I guess, it seems like we're in a little bit of a weird place in terms of where the market is, that, there's not a huge economic incentive for these companies to make significant renovations. And so we're in this kind of cycle where the people who suffer are the hundreds of people who live in these conditions. But it's hard for us to get these companies to actually mitigate these issues. And so, I understand that we want to be careful about kind of the moral hazard here, and I do too. It's public money, but I guess I would just urge us to consider some ways in which we can try to resolve this issue, because I think we're stuck in a little bit of a spiral here with regard to the conditions in some of these large multifamily units.
I think that's absolutely correct, and that's the tough part, about this. This is a situation, I think, in my mind, generally, our side on this is enforcement of our codes, enforcement of our housing, building codes, and then, the partners that, HUD, and the other partners that have an invested interest in these apartments as well. But yeah, it's heartbreaking. Yeah, I get that.
And I appreciate that, and I guess just to make one more comparison, where the market doesn't work on the commercial or kind of business side, we're able to step in with incentives as we saw in some of the earlier slides, and I wonder whether something like that is appropriate here.
Thank you. Nancy Holland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My colleague just covered some of the questions and concerns that I was going to express, but I did want to point to the $200,000 line item that we have dedicated to Fair Housing Contact Services, which for decades has been an extremely competent, extremely helpful source of eviction prevention services and also remedial assistance in terms of access to state and federal court remedies for actual housing discrimination. And I wonder, as we deliberate and potentially move money around without voluntelling this hardworking, very busy agency how to conduct its business, I wonder if there is some universe in which it makes sense to dedicate additional money to an agency that exists to provide at no charge to tenants and other residents in the area that they might increase that capacity to do so. Their eviction prevention services are rock solid, as are their services for assisting people who've been victims of unlawful discriminatory conduct in the provision of housing. So I just wanted to throw that out there. I think that this is very much an upstream pre-eviction investment that could be worth our while.
And we are working with them in developing some type of landlord training, tenant training as well. So everybody's well aware of their rights.
Thank you, Russ. Neal? Russ? Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things. One, Councilwoman Holland reminded me, she spoke of fair housing contact. I know I asked if we can have in our budget some money for fair housing advocate as well, Mr. Vincent Curry, because I know he's in the middle of a lot of different things that take place. Don't know if we've had an opportunity to reassess. We see the success of our 15-year 100% tax abatement program, but see if what the long-term economic impact is there, because as we've had some 2,000 plus applicants for the ARPA housing fund, there's a lot of people that still don't qualify for that, and to see if we could come up with some kind of creative way of assisting them, maybe shifting those tax incentives that are going with the 15-year 100% tax abatement to folks who, like at one of my board meetings, I had a constituent who said she's lived in her house for 50 years. She doesn't qualify. She doesn't meet those qualifications for the $25,000 minor home repair, but yet she needs help. Just asking if we can come up with something creative there. But more importantly, to some of the comments from some of the colleagues, it seems like most of our buildings are in the same age group. All of them are having problems with their elevators. That's one of the main issues in a lot of these buildings that have elevators. I don't know if we've ever had a study on what buildings are in that same demographic to try to get ahead of that, for one. But then two, having an understanding of the capacity of these buildings to get the financing to reinvest inside their structures. So my question is, in a public-private partnership, have we reached out to find out where the lending institutions that they're dealing with, to see if we can kind of like package this in some kind of way, work with them to package this to help them get the funding that they need to rehab their buildings? I know on the on the real estate side, that's one of the advantages is a creative financing. Working with our corporate partners that have these structures, doing an assessment on where they stand on what repairs need to be done, and then working with them and someone that's skilled in that area to help them get the funding that they need, because I don't know who said it, it's questionable on how much we could do with public dollars anyways, but the reality still stands that these folks that own these structures in our community are struggling. Either, I don't want to think all of them are just trying to extract all that they can get out of them without reinvesting. I would like to think that some of them would like to be able to reinvest and improve their properties, but they're just having a challenge just like some of our residents are.
Okay, very good, thank you. Helen Tomic.
Okay, so the next section we're going to talk about is our quote-unquote miscellaneous section, and I'm going to defer to Jim Ashley for this section.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Council. The first project...
Sir, I don't know if there's something you could do maybe with the volume or with the clarity isn't, I don't know if you could fix that.
Push, is it louder now?
It's a very bassy.
Bassy.
Okay.
So, I'll do my best. The first project is the equipment replacement program for public works, the purchase and replacement of additional equipment to better maintain streets and roadways in all city wards. Now we're going to be talking about police and fire next week, given their availability. So in your budget, you'd be skipping down to the bottom of page 7 in the document, and it would be under other. We'd be under debt service at $39 million. The annual service of general obligation debt for capital projects. This amount is slightly lower than last year, and about 18% lower than 5 years ago. Downtown wayfinding. This is continued installation of wayfinding signage downtown to show our amenities, be visible to residents and visitors, driving, walking, and biking. The photo is a new sign at Main and Bowery Street. The electric vehicle infrastructure of $1 million. We're seeking a grant under the National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Formula Program from the Department of Transportation to deploy EV charging infrastructure and rideshare. It requires an 80-20 match. We may be able to use in-kind services for our local share. Next slide.
Oops, sorry, there we go, sorry.
Traffic miscellaneous, just our annual program replacement of traffic-related devices and signals throughout the city. This is the same amount that we had in 2022. And then again, we'd be skipping police and fire section from the budget and going down to the bottom of page 8 in your document.
God, I can't hear.
That would be under trees.
Okay, 1 second.
Downtown beautification 2023. $20,000 an annual program for planting and maintaining flower window boxes, hanging baskets, and plant beds at the municipal building in Civic Mall. The 2023 AWR tree planting, $450,000 sewer capital funds replacement of trees due to work being performed at the Akron Waterways Renewal Program. This replaces 2 trees for each tree removed. We've had that program in our budget before. 2023 citywide tree removal and trimming, annual program to remove and trim trees throughout the city to maximize the lifespan of street trees.
Okay, Jim, thank you for that. First thing I think we should adjust within the budget is a new microphone for you. And then secondly, just
Noted, that's noted.
just teasing, Jim. You do a great job for us. We appreciate it. I know Phil Lombardo had a question here.
Thank you. Jim, let's go back to
Jim, let's go back to traffic miscellaneous. $100,000. So could you give me some examples of traffic-related devices and signals? What do we mean here? Is that just a traffic signal?
We can get you a list of what they were doing this year. But I know they're replacing a lot of the traffic lights, the LED. We still have those and other signals, the LED and remote services. But we can provide you a list of what they did this year.
Well, more specifically, we're not talking about the speed tables or anything like that, are we?
No.
Okay. What about, and I don't even have an example, but where I was at in some city, could have been North Canton, but the devices that you see on certain poles that, reflect how fast you're going, just to make drivers aware, would that fall under something like this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know if we're allowed to have those, but that would be nice. The other question I have is on, citywide tree removal and trimming. So this is just what obviously the city of Akron does. Where does Ohio Edison come in with like tree trimming? Do we, I guess, communicate with them on certain trimming projects, or this is just maybe in the city of Akron we can't see certain signs in right of way, so we need to trim wild trees?
So we work with them. I think Jim Hall could probably address this in detail. I believe they do work.
Didn't hear that at all.
Can you try again, Mr. Ashley, please?
Oh, I was saying, Jim Hall could probably give you more information on that, but I do believe they do work together.
Seems more or less like an operating thing, but if you could respond to that, Mr. Ashley.
Okay, Jim Hall.
That would be great. Very good. You okay,
Travis,
Miss?
can you shed light on that?
Who? I'm sorry?
Sorry, Helen, Thomas Tatum left.
Okay.
I can, sorry. We do, you notice some of this is street lighting that pays for the trimming, so when you have dark streets, a lot of times it's because the trees have overgrown in front of the street lights and stuff. So, but it does include, there's also IT in there, so it is for anything, signs, street lighting, stuff like that.
Okay.
And then just the removal of trees that need removed as well. Dead trees in the right of way or dying.
Okay, so just like you said, so there definitely are street lights. The city tree is just overshadowing it, so that would be something on the city of Akron to trim around.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Travis. I don't even know who's on this call because we've had so thank you, Travis, though, for your comments reference to that. Are you okay, Mr. Lombardo, anymore?
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm good.
Sharon Connor has her hand up.
Travis, can you allude how long we plan on this tree planting program?
Well, it is with our Waterways Renewed program that started maybe 2012. I think we've been doing this 2 for 1 program, and it'll continue at least until we have the, you know, our last consent decree projects done, so what, another 4 years or so. After that, I guess we'll have to talk about what kind of program we want that to kind of morph into. But right now, we're using sewer money to pay for these tree plantings. And I know we'll have to probably table that private property tree removals, because I know we did kind of get into that a little bit. But we'll have to talk with Public Works, and with that, we could spend a lot of money on that, because a lot of people want their neighbors' trees removed and stuff like that, so.
I appreciate that. I would love to be part of that conversation. I know many of the trees in our neighborhood were all put in around the same time, and my fear is that when they fall, they'll fall like dominoes. So if we could get something in place, I would love to have that conversation.
Okay.
Very good. Further questions or comments? I see Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Actually, really appreciate Councilwoman Connor bringing up the trees, because I had similar questions. I know that we have a tree canopy report from 2021 that was done by Baby Tree, and I guess part of my concern about this is that, you know, they laid out 4 different scenarios, and the current scenario, you know, is the $450,000 a year that we've been doing, and under that scenario, we will continue to lose tree canopy, and to get to a point of no net loss, it's a $2.4 million a year investment, and to actually get to our goal of 40% tree canopy cover by 2040, that's a much larger investment as well. And so I guess my question is our plan from a sustainability perspective, understanding how important the tree canopy is, and that, you know, we paid a lot to get this report done, do we plan to continue with the current investment, or have, you know, is there any discussion about increasing that investment so that we can at least not continue to lose our tree canopy? It's very difficult to get it back once we lose it.
Is there anyone wish to respond to that?
Yeah, we'll have to get back to you on that one. I do not know. I know, yes, we do need to increase, you know, our tree planting to, you know, try to get back to what, and not lose so much. But yeah, as you know, we're just kind of planting what we, you know, replanting what we remove in some of these projects right now, and that's not keeping up.
Yeah, I appreciate any follow-up that's possible, Mr. Capper, but I think the other point, and I think Mr. Lombardo touched on this briefly, is the traffic miscellaneous. I don't see a separate line item in this budget for any kind of traffic calming or speed calming. I know, you know, we made the decision not to make additional investments in 2022 into speed tables, but, you know, I do worry that, you know, we're not making progress on this issue as much as we should, given how significant of an issue it is for our residents. So is there a reason why we don't have a new investment in, whether it doesn't have to be speed tables, but other forms of traffic calming in this budget, or am I missing it?
So it is not in there. We budgeted, I think $200,000 in 2022. And for various reasons, we're studying, you know, what is the best solution for all of this. We are looking at purchasing, I don't know if Jimmy Hall's on the line, we are looking at purchasing to reinstall those speed tables from last year, next year, the manpower and the equipment, but we're still trying to figure out what is the optimal solution to slow traffic down. So we do not have anything in the 2023 budget, still studying data from before and looking at the purchase of this new equipment from 2022 and see how that will be reflected in future data.
And we haven't used that $200,000 from this year, right, Mr.
I think we just put in some requisitions in for some equipment to reinstall for next year, but Jimmy, I don't know if he has access to it. Or Chris, do you have any comments, Chris Little?
No, that is correct, Helen. We're gonna have to buy all new hardware to reinstall the tables that we currently own, and we are looking at some other traffic calming devices with the current budget. But we are working with AMETS to get more data and collect more data to see what the long-term solution is. And if I could just touch on the trees real quick, we did sign a 3-year agreement. Last year we planted 1,800. This year we're planting 1,800, and next year we're planting 1,800 trees. So that's 5,400 trees with this current contract, and we will continue at that pace to keep our tree canopy up and growing. And as far as the trimming goes, Ohio Edison only trims for their line clearance. They don't trim anything else, and we do not trim what they trim because we are not certified to be that close to the power lines. Our trimming all goes to clearing traffic and roadway signs. So just to clear that up.
Thank you, Mr. Little. I guess one quick follow-up. I know the tree canopy report shows that we plant 1,200 trees a year for $450,000. Are you saying that we're able to do 1,800 for $450,000?
Yes.
Okay, that's good.
Yep.
Although I still think we need to figure out how to get us to the no net loss. And then in terms of the traffic, I'm glad that there are discussions around additional traffic calming, but I think we really do need to see it reflected in the budget. That's at least my comment.
Thank you, Mr.
Duly noted.
Thank you, Mr. Malik. Mr. Kaler?
Sorry, but I gotta jump off. I'm in this Gorge Dam meeting. I have to present, so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Mr. Kamer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll yield to Councilwoman Holland. I'm not sure if she was before me.
Okay, Nancy Holland?
Thank you, Councilman Cameron. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to quickly add my voice to the call for more trees and more speed calming measures. I was disappointed too, not to see a breakout of some budgeting for either more speed tables or whatever the latest version is. I would say it tops the list of most frequent requests and also most positive feedback out of Ward 1. Ward 1 is a big fan of the speed tables, and I appreciate everybody who was part of that effort and part of the installation. The tree canopy is equally important to the people of Ward 1, and I would simply gently point out that it's not just about the trees themselves. All the data is in, and we know that this is about health and well-being. It's about mental health. It is about safety. It is about sustainability. It is about 7 generations down the road. And to Councilwoman Connor's point, I'd like to add my voice to that as well. We have a lot of concern in the older parts of Akron that our beautiful old growth trees are an issue as well. And we need to be prepared to step in to assist residents and also to, maintain safety when trees are coming down in areas where no one is willing or able to take responsibility for removal. And thank you.
Mr. Kamer?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to wait until later on in the budget, but I know my colleague, Councilman Malik, just brought up about the speed calming, and obviously Councilwoman Holland did too. And I am disappointed that I do not see a line item for some kind of speed calming or anything to curb speeding. Speed humps. I wasn't hugely in favor of them at first. I was on the fence about them, but I will tell you that Ward 7 is highly in favor of those speed tables. I cannot tell you how many streets I have wrote down that want a speed table. Especially when the administration or the police department refers citizens back to me to handle those calls, and I love those calls. They can call me anytime. And now it's time for us to put something in this budget for speed calming. I cannot support going into 2023, and I'll say this, with one speed table. I understand there's 2 speed tables per ward, if you want to say that, but I really think we need to move forward with some kind of speed calming line item, and I'm going to throw out a large number. We do need signs like what Councilman Lombardo said, North Canton. Oh my gosh, they have so many of those signs that are posted throughout their city in regards to how fast you are going. So with that, I know we're limited on time, I need 3 to 5 speed tables in 2023 and whatever else we can do for speed calming. So I look forward to continuing this conversation with my colleagues, especially Councilman Malik and Councilwoman Holland, so we can try to, do something in regards to speeding, because I get those calls all the time from the parents that, a little child's going to get killed, and I'm going to go to the news, or I'm coming downtown to City Hall, and I hear it all the time. I'm sure everybody that is listening right now can shake their head and say, yeah, I've got those calls too. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Tara Mosley.
Thank you, Chairman Fusco. Echoing the sentiments of my colleagues, over the years when we have our capital budget hearings, speeding is always at the top of that list. And I know that when they put the one on North Street, they put it there because people kept hitting the school bus with kids in it. And during the capital budget hearings, I know myself, Councilman Kamers talked about the speeding, especially over in his area off, I think it's at Glenmont or something all the time. But putting these illuminated stop signs was one of the requests. We have to go back and look into that. The illuminated stop signs, putting the digital speed mileages in the neighborhoods like they have down on North Street. Those are things that we've talked about almost every cycle, and then nothing ever happens. So if we could talk about that again and seeing how we can, allocate some funds to that, that would be great. And again, like they said, we need more speed humps because a set is not enough. Thank you.
Thank you. I know last year we did some things. I got some other questions, but I'm going to save them for later. Anyone else? Oh, Mr. Malik.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just briefly, wanted to piggyback off of comments made by my colleagues, Ms. Mosley and Mr. Kamer. I think Mr. Kamer mentioned, we couldn't write down fast enough the number of streets that, residents want. I know that, if we had 10 speed tables in Ward 8, we could put them out tonight, and I'm sure that's the case in most other wards as well. I think the problem that we see, at least my understanding of it, is that, the speed tables that we do have, it took a city crew, a long time to put those out and then to take them back up again. And so it sounds to me like that process is not very scalable, and that's why, I know we've talked about potentially permanent speed tables, or at least piloting those, but also to Councilwoman Mosley's point, there's all kinds of things that we could do, these flashing speed stop signs, digital speed indicators, and I just think, just to put a fine point on it, $100,000 or $200,000 is not going to make a big dent in this issue. And we could put out 10 of those digital speed indicators in each of our wards tonight as well. And I just think we really have to consider tackling this on a broader level.
Okay. Mr. Neal?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate the comments. I get calls too about the speed tables, but the thing that I found is with us changing the road diets and the speed tables is that once people find out that the speed table is on one street, they speed down the next street. they reroute their traffic. And, you know, I like, this isn't a capital budget, but since we're having this discussion, as we look into the operating budget, looking at ways to use our reserve officers, to put officers out on the street, to hit people with tickets. Changing people's behavior is going to be the one way to address this. I always, when people call me, I ask them one question. I say, do you speed through Colgan Falls? All of them say no. Because Colgan Falls is known for hitting you with a ticket if you speed through their community. Councilman Malik mentioned it. I mean, is this scalable? I don't want to say no to anything that folks have said, but the ultimate thing is changing people's behavior. And when you hit their pocket, that's what changes their behavior. So when we get to the operating budget, we have to look at having money in the budget and working with the police to maybe change the way they do things, putting some reserve officers out in communities, hitting them with the people with tickets, because I think there is still some legality where we can't use technology that way. That's just my contribution to this conversation, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, how about Parks and Recreation?
I will defer to Mr. Ashley on Parks and Recreation as well. Thank you.
Okay, the first project, irrigation upgrade and miscellaneous repairs. We began that program this year, upgrading the IQ remote control systems. This year they've addressed parks maintenance through Copley Road Soccer Field, Northwest Park, and Lane Field. In 2023, they're looking at doing Patterson Sports Complex and Logan Field. Akron Park sign replacement. This is implementing the annual program to replace park signs to conform with a new park sign standard. These standards are going to urban design in December. The budget here is to cover the cost of sign printing equipment and materials. Akron Parks Challenge. Design, construction, and recommending improvements identified by the Akron Parks Collaborative through our Akron Parks Challenge grant. The photo here is the transformation of Jewett Park that was completed this year. The plan in 2023 is to award 1 park and complete 3 active parks, which are Kerr, Boss, and the Hyatt Lions Park. Akron Peninsula Road multi-use trail. This is a multi-use trail around Akron Peninsula Road, from Portage Trail extension to the Riverwood development, includes a crosswalk at Hampton Knoll, Pleasant Run, and Sycamore. We are seeking outside funding for this project, anticipate construction in 2024. Belt Street Community Center, replacement of the boilers at the Belt Street Community Center. Replace all non-functioning units that are critical in HVAC units throughout the building. Survey has been completed by Akron Energy. Port resurfacing program. The annual program we started this
Mr. Ashley, we have a question. Sorry to.
That's fine.
Sharon Connor, please. Yes, we have a question.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Ashley, I have a question on the Akron Park sign replacement program. I'm aware that many of our parks don't have signs, or the existing signs are worn and tattered. But is there a way that these signs are going to be designed so that the mayor's name is changeable? Because as we know, we'll probably have a new mayor in a year or so.
Yeah, the new sign, that's one of the reasons, it's going to be easy to replace like that on the signs, and they're going to be all done in-house. So that is going to be addressed. That won't be an issue.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, here we are on cover surfacing. This is to address basketball, pickleball, and tennis courts. Needs in 2022, we're doing Davenport Park, Joy Park, and plans for Kerr Park. The 2023 program will include Kerr Park Tennis Court and Ohio Erie Canal Park basketball and tennis courts. Ed Davis Community Center, $7 million is the renovation of the Ed Davis Community Center, including expansion of the gymnasium to include additional seating and provide an indoor walking track. Final construction drawings are near completion and it's scheduled to be complete in 2024. The next two items are needed to complete the Firestone Stadium renovation. Turf field installation was awarded the field turf USA back in July for $1 million, and that work will begin soon. The first one is to remodel all the restroom facilities, new fixtures, stalls, and flooring. Also includes funds for weatherproofing and security cameras. In the Firestone Stadium turf field, the additional $150,000 here is the line item for installation of batting cage facility and bullpens on the site needed for tournament play. Are there questions on this side, or should I continue, Mr. Fusco?
No, thank you. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, go ahead and proceed, Mr. Ashley.
Thank you.
I got a comment, sir.
Oh, sorry, Mr. Kamer?
I'm sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to go ahead and throw this out there. I'm sure somebody won't like me, but actually, Councilwoman Connor made me think of it. The Akron Park sign replacement program, I mean, she brought up a good concern about, obviously, our current mayor will not be running for re-election, so we'll be having a new mayor going into 2024. But that would be a perfect line item to consider postponing, and maybe even using some of that fund to calm speeding. So just wanted to throw that out there, and it's probably not doable, or it could be doable, but I just think that could be a good opportunity to postpone that program for another year or two, and maybe take some of that funding and put it somewhere else. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Sorry. Oh, Tara Mosley.
Thank you. Jim, on the Joy Park, where did it go? Where did it go? Go back to my page.
Did we hit it yet?
Are we there yet?
I don't think we're there yet.
No.
Oh, well, on the first part, where we talk about the court resurfacing program, and it states on here, annual program to address basketball, pickleball, and tennis court resurfacing needs. Is this the tennis court at Joy Park or at Mason Park? Because Joy Park is going to be a pickleball court.
Well, this is at Joy Park.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Ashley.
Okay, the following four projects for the Gorge Dam removal. Our Environmental Engineering Division is helping manage this massive undertaking. The projects here are actually listed in reverse order of what needs to occur, but I'll stay in order here. The Gorge Dam removal, this is a Great Lakes Restoration grant to pay for the design of the removal of the Gorge Dam and associated with river restoration. Over 50% of the design drawings are complete. Construction to begin in 2025. The Contaminated Sediment Project is the U.S. EPA designing removal of the Gorge Dam contaminated sediment. The City of Akron is providing a portion of local share by using ODNR funds. This is scheduled to begin in the spring of 2024. The Gorge Dam disposal area, the Water Resource Restoration Sponsorship Program, is the constructed sediment disposal area that's needed to place the dredged sediment from the Gorge Dam pool. And the final project is the power plant site. Stabilization of the former Ohio Edison power plant site at Front Street. The EPA determined there is a sheet pile retaining wall that would fail during the sediment removal. So the site will be sloped back ahead of the dredging.
Go ahead.
Joy Park Center assessment. This is assessment of the community center for upgrades for the community center facility audits that we recently completed at our other three sites. In 2022, we have addressed the HVAC upgrades at the Joy Park Community Center. The Joy Park walking path, the carryover, this will be installation of a limestone walking path to connect homes around Joy Park and will be installed by Parks Maintenance. Kaboom Playgrounds. This is a continuation of our partnership with Kaboom for the construction of inclusive playgrounds to address place-based inequities. Sites will be located in ARPA income qualifying areas. In 2022, new playgrounds were built at Joy Park and Talbot Whitney Park. Kaboom is working with the city right now to complete the analysis of all existing play areas and their deficiencies. And we will also be looking at socioeconomic data to identify where gaps exist. The Little Cuyahoga River restoration Lowhead Dam removal would restore floodplain areas and remove 3 Lowhead dams to address channelization of the river and improve fish habitat. Design is intended to be completed in April of 2023. Construction will begin in April of 2024 and be completed in August of 2025. As you see on this slide, this extends from Cascade Valley all the way down to East Market Street. The Lot 3 restrooms, will be updating the restrooms at Lot 3 in advance of the renovation for the Lot 3 development. Next slide. And this is the Lot 3 revision plan. This is improvements in accordance to the Akron Civic Commons 2.0 plan. It's a $10 million project, includes funding from John S. Knight, Clement County, Ohio Erie Canalway, and individual donors. Elements include shaded seating, landscape gardens, artwork, ice skating, concert, and festival public spaces, and a world-class performance pavilion. Miscellaneous parks and community centers, $500,000 for small cap improvements at various parks and community centers. It also includes upgrades to existing outdated community center facilities. Morgan Park, this is park rehabilitation, which will include repairs to the pavilion and the play area. Parks and public spaces, is park security upgrade, installation of cameras at various parks to improve security and help reduce vandalism. Final item on this page is Patterson Park Community Center. This is rebuild the Patterson Park Community Center. Total estimated cost is around $7 million.
Okay, go ahead.
Perkins Pool and Bath House rehabilitation, $5.6 million is the reconstruction of the pool and the bath house. Groundbreaking is scheduled for tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. It's scheduled to reopen in July 4th of 2023. Elements include a 15-foot slide, climbing wall, shallow water play space, 25-meter lap lane, and shaded seating. Reservoir Pool and Bath House will be the reconstruction of Reservoir Pool. This design will be similar to the Perkins Pool project. River City Heritage Trail Phase 1 is creation of a multi-recreational trail that utilizes the 6-mile rail corridor formerly used by rubber companies. Phase 1 limits run from Kelly Avenue to East Exchange Street. Construction will start in 2023 and be completed in the summer. The federal money there is the transportation alternatives set aside for RAMNet. Schneider Park walking path, this is a carryover from this year. Construction of a walking path around the park's perimeter and a middle park connection. Construction will take place over the winter months. Summit Lake Vision Plan, improvements required by Akron Civic Commons 2.0, focusing on the north shore of the activity area for a multi-purpose trail. Groundbreaking was last Tuesday for the first phase, which is a 2.75-mile multi-purpose trail around Summit Lake, linking east and west neighborhoods. This will be accessible for hikers, walkers, and bicyclists. And the other projects include a large pavilion, shaded seating, swings, a canoe and kayak share, boat launch ramp, and concession stand.
Any questions? Mr. Lombardo?
Jim, regarding the Patterson Park Community Center, the $4 million there, is that just for the building itself, maybe some parking? I was wondering if it includes the basketball and tennis courts, resurfacing or better lighting, you know, for the whole complex.
That money was just for the rebuilding of the community center. So the tennis courts would be addressed either through court surfacing or through miscellaneous parking.
Okay. Thank you.
I hope you understood that. Any other questions? Ms. Mosley?
Jim, on the Joy Park Community Center assessment, this is an assessment, not an improvement. So we're gonna pay someone 50 grand to walk through the building to assess the building? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, well, we are doing the HVAC work this year, but yeah, this is the same. We've hired probably prime consultants. They did the other community center assessment to really understand what is needed before we just start, like doing Band-Aid approaches and, determine if we need total replacement of certain sections or not. And also getting community input on what is needed, what is no longer used at the center, what can be converted.
Jim, I'm gonna need you to send me that in an email, because I'm having a really hard time
Michelle,
hearing
can you get on, Michelle? Enough, Michelle, here we go. Sure. Can you provide an explanation of what this assessment would look like then?
So the assessment takes a look at what the needs are, just as Jim Ashley said. It'll take a look at that HVAC, the windows, the masonry, the exterior. It may not be that amount of money, that's what's been budgeted, but it gives us a better idea as to what is needed at the facility. Okay. And then there's also public outreach that happens during that assessment that's going to let us engage with the community on what activities they want to see, what facility improvements they want to see, so that they are able to participate in what we provide for them at their renovated center.
Okay, so where this miscellaneous parks and community centers, so after they do their assessment, are they gonna be able to tap into this miscellaneous parks and community centers funding? Because, we had this meeting when we approved the legislation for Patterson Park and for Ed Davis, and I'm still not understanding how Joy Park only got $400,000 when all the other parks got $1 million. I get it, they deserve it, but I don't want the residents at Joy Park feeling like they got the short end here. We know the roof is leaking. There should have been a line item for that. The roof is leaking, everyone knows it, I've showed it to them. There's issues that...
This is the first part, the first step in a long process. So we've talked about Ed Davis quite a bit. We've talked about Patterson Park. We've talked about Reservoir Park and the extensive improvements that are going on there. This is how we started. Okay. With the assessment first. We look at the needs, the physical infrastructure needs. We meet with the residents, and as Michelle indicated, they tell us what they want. They also tell us what they don't want. So then we take all of that information together, and then we work with the consultants to develop an infrastructure plan. This is what it's going to look like. This is what we think the needs are. You need a new HVAC. You don't need new windows. Once that preliminary floor plan is provided to us, we'll go back to the residents. Hey, we're looking at, this is going to be a community center, a community room on this side of the building. Does that make sense? Do you want it somewhere else? So once we're all on the same page with the residents, with the city, with the council person, then we start the next steps in designing this, and then looking at what you see now at Reservoir, at Davis, and at Patterson Park. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does, Helen, but also in the miscellaneous parks and community centers, if we could really be intentional about the lighting at Joy Park. I know they said they probably wouldn't be able to put it around the walking path because they're gonna put some benches around it, and that's fine, but it needs to be a little more well lit. Now that we're putting in a walking path, if we could think about that and what that looks like. I'm sure I've brought this up before when we brought up Joy Park, but the lighting is going to be very important with a walking path.
Mm-hmm. Understood.
All right, thank you.
So you're kind of requesting that we look at lighting through miscellaneous parks sooner rather than later?
Correct.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Nancy Holland, then Linda Mobian. Just like to remind everyone, we still have like 4 or 5 pages to go, and our meeting begins at 7. So Nancy Holland.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Ms. Tomic, I'm assuming here, but I wanted to just get it from you, that there was a need assessment already conducted on Balch Street sometime in the past, and that's how the decision was made that there would be HVAC upgrading happening. Is that right?
I would say the HVAC upgrading told us it needed to be replaced sooner rather than later. It's an emergency repair. So yes, it's,
I
yes.
don't disagree, but I do want to raise my hand on behalf of the good people of Ward 1. With due respect to all the other wards represented here, and understanding as I do that we all have to advocate for our neighborhoods. Poor Balch Street. You know, I would like to ask that there be some additional attention given to that facility, which needs just about everything. If only lighting were our one and only concern there. You know, the parking lot, you know, just to begin with, is like the surface of the moon. The facility itself is just fraught with structural problems. You know, it's baffling to me how we can be spending so much money in other areas. And I'm glad, I'm grateful, I thank you for the emergency attention to the HVAC at Balch Street, but it needs so much more. Thank you.
Understood. Thanks. Thank you.
Linda Mobian.
Yes, thank you. I don't have a ward, so what I'm curious about, because different community centers or recreation facilities. However, the ARPA dollars have to be obligated, what, by 2023 or?
2024, December 31st, 2024.
Have to be obligated.
Correct.
And spent by 2026?
Correct.
Okay, so there'll still be some, hopefully there'll be some more dollars left to cover these recreational facilities, because I don't see Lawton on here either, and I go there more than any other place. So I'm just wondering if we need to set aside some dollars, but you think we're gonna have some money left over?
Well, we're gonna have to, we'll look at that, and we'll have to, once that assessment comes through, we may have to get creative in the way we fund Joy Park.
Okay, well, Joy and Lawton and Balch Street, all of them. Okay, I hear you. Okay, just wanted to make sure. Thank you.
Mr. Neal.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Thanks, Mr. Mobian, for mentioning Barton Street. I was just assuming in that $500,000 that's miscellaneous, some of the needs in Barton Street will be taken care of from there. I do want to support my colleague, Ms. Holland, in regards to Balch Street. That miscellaneous, that's $500,000. If we could get an assessment, because I know I get complaints from folks that go there to use the steam room and the whirlpool, and they're never working. I don't know what the repairs are on those alone. So yeah, if we could get that. But I do want to chime in with my colleagues that are concerned about lighting at our rec centers, especially now that the time has changed. When you walk out the back of Lawton Street, it is pitch black. It's not safe for those who work there. Our rec centers Lawton Street is used heavily by a lot of senior groups and women groups. It's just not safe. So I heard, I think it was Councilwoman Mosley asked about if that lighting was in the miscellaneous. That's another one that has to be addressed right away in this budget as far as lighting, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Further
We noted that. Thank you.
Further questions or comments? Okay. Public facilities.
Deferring to Mr. Ashley on this one as well.
The first four project at the airport, Travis is going to speak on.
Oh, good.
Yeah, thank you. This is the first four there, the Akron Fulton Airport out on Triplet Boulevard. So we have four projects, well, four items. The first one being the airport fuel farm replacement. We have 3 underground single wall fiberglass tanks for our airplane fuel and jet fuel. So those are past their useful life and they're becoming obsolete. So this is to study, you know, putting new tanks above ground. We're actually looking into trying to get some bill money for this as well, but this would just be the design for next year. We also have airport general consulting services. So we have a consultant specifically that works on the airport, and it's pretty sophisticated, specialized work. So this is to do anything from land leases, is where the airport gets most of its revenue from. And then also doing grant submissions, to the FAA or to ODOT for future projects. We do have 2 projects that are funded, that are planned to go next year, funded through ODOT. The first one is the REAL installation, and that stands for the Runway End Identifier Lights. They're old. The parts you can't even get anymore, so they're kind of held together with, baler wire and duct tape. So ODOT covers 95% of that. It's only a 5% match. And we have been awarded that grant, so that will go next year. And also the taxiway R1 and R2, which is the parallel taxiway that runs right along all the T-hangers. So that pavement is due for some rehab, and once again, ODOT has awarded us a grant on this, and it's 95% funded.
Very good, thank you. I do have one question, though. It seems as though between the actual capital budget and the presentation, we have a $44,000 discrepancy between the airport REIL installation, the real installation, so curious which one is off a little bit. So,
Mr. Fusco, you may have an older version of the budget.
Oh, okay, I got both of these off the table.
Matches the numbers that I have.
Okay, I grabbed this off the table, next to the
Okay,
presentation.
I will review that. We will review that and get back to you.
Thank you, perfect. Go ahead.
Okay, the next project, the BF Goodrich Power Plant demolition. City did receive a grant from ODOD. So the number that you see there is the total project cost. The city has a 25% share of that. So we're in the process right now of putting together an RFQ to get some contractors out there in order to do the work. Probably the work will start next year, and it will be completed probably by the end of next year is what we are anticipating right now.
Okay. Okay.
And the next project would be, let's see here. Oh, the Canal Park Stadium improvements. Major League Baseball has come in to not just our facility at Canal Park, but many other minor league parks, and have sort of said you have to make these improvements in order to continue to have your minor league team. Basically, these improvements for the $850,000 are a lot of COVID safety related improvements. For instance, we have to install a actual separate eating area for the teams. So they can't just eat in front of their locker, they have to actually have an area that they can eat in. And we have to upgrade the restrooms for the teams.
Okay.
So these are all standards that Major League Baseball has imposed basically on the owners of the team.
Okay.
So since the city is the owner of the facility, we have to sort of apply these and get them handled by next year.
Okay.
The Cascade parking deck and green elevator and orange elevator, both sets of these elevators are ready for bid in Q1 of 2023. Cascade Valley deck structural repairs, continued column and related repairs of Cascade parking deck as prioritized by the 2020 Walker Consultants Parking Garage Study. Cascade Scenic Railway, Merriman Valley train station. This is a carryover design and construction of Merriman Valley train station. Engineering is working on an RFQ for architectural services. They will be having a community meeting after schematic design is complete. Total budget is $350,000. Construction to begin in fall 2023. Next slide. Erie Island School demolition, $400,000. Grant matching funds for demolition includes asbestos survey, engineering costs, demolition, removal of debris, and site restoration. The Greystone HVAC controls, replacement of the HVAC system at Greystone. The major roof repairs were completed in this year. HVAC control replacement system, replacement of 12 HVAC controls at Stubbs Building and the Municipal Service Center. The current systems are no longer supported and about 10 years beyond their useful life. The John Knight Center roof replacement, $1.3 million. Replacement of a 28-year-old roof at John Knight, proposing a retrofit layover roofing system which offers substantial savings over a full roof tear-off replacement. Miscellaneous facilities improvements at $250,000. The annual program, security upgrades, HVAC upgrades, roofing repairs, and various other repairs at maintenance and security buildings at the Municipal Service Center. Next slide. MSC fire and alarm sprinklers. This is to install fire suppression system upgrade at the Municipal Service Center. The Municipal Service Center training and locker rooms, $10,000. This is the design, starting the design for locker room improvements at the Municipal Service Center. And then the parking deck improvements, various improvements to parking decks, including waterproofing, ceiling, painting, parking stalls, crosswalks, and signage, again, part of the Walker study that was done. And the parking deck lighting upgrades, the annual program, we're doing to convert parking deck lighting to LED. Project being bid in smaller increments to give smaller contractors a chance to bid. For example, the Cascade parking deck will be bid in 7 phases given the size of the structure. And the parking deck maintenance program at the Cascade deck needs the downtown parking deck repairs to extend useful life, and this will include knocking down loose concrete, various patching, various waterproofing, and expansion joint replacement. Question.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, if I could real quickly, the airport, the REAL installation, you are correct. It was there is a $44,000 differential. What is in the budget is correct. What's in our PowerPoint is not correct. We'll make that adjustment. So I apologize for that.
Okay, thank you. The my question though is the Cascade deck, which I believe is our biggest, our largest, and I know we've invested quite a bit in it over time. Is the $500,000, is that, it seems as though we needed more on an annualized basis just to maintain it, just to keep it current. I don't know though. Do we have some good data from engineering or what have you in terms of structurally? It just wasn't a good idea back in the 60s whenever they built a deck in the ground. It just didn't seem like a good idea. I'm sure at the time it was, but right now it's just so expensive to maintain. But then again, we rely on it so much. I see Mr. Capper's on the line here. Maybe he could answer that. And maybe just getting back to me is fine, and everybody else on council. The hour is getting late, so if you could just get back to all of us on that, I'd appreciate it. I do see Mr. Malik's hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask about the Merriman Valley train station. So this $200,000 is for remaining design, is that correct?
Please keep in mind, this is a CDBG line item, so this is one of those that's going to carry over next year. We have money set aside for design, not $200,000. So, and I don't know, I think we're looking at possibly $50,000 for design. And then next year, or when we're ready for construction, we will capture the entire cost of the construction of that project. We just reflected what was in the 2022 consolidated plan budget. But we are looking at $50,000 different design and future construction utilizing CDBG funds, and we don't know what that cost is going to be.
And the intent is that the construction will begin in 2023 and conclude in 2024, is that correct?
Michelle, can you touch on that?
I do not think that construction will take more than a year, but we just really don't have that schedule yet.
Okay. Well, I guess, I guess to be a stickler, I was going to say not to be a stickler, but I mean a stickler. If the intent is to complete the train station in 2023, then it would be helpful for the budget to correctly capture the total cost for design and construction, correct?
Correct, but don't forget the CDBG budget is going to come back to council sometime in 23 as well.
Okay.
CDBG, yeah, right. Very good. Any further questions or comments? I will tell you that we are going to do transportation next week. It was scheduled for today, but certainly appreciate everybody's patience, certainly appreciate everybody's questions and comments in reference to this. Looking forward to the administration coming back and letting us know their thoughts on some of these that weren't answered today. And we will resume this budget review next Monday at 4 o'clock. Thank you all, and look forward to seeing everyone at 7.